The Circadian World, in the footsteps of Taiga Maya. Written and directed by Thierry Van Roy. With the voice of Woody Young. Part 3. Endless Friday. Zinacantan, Mexico, the 21st of December, 2012. The shock comes like the end of the world, or more precisely, the end of the world of living beings. There is a huge earthquake, followed by hurricanes blowing in like thousands of steam locomotives approaching. They nearly pulled off the cenote's steel cover. After that, in a few hours, the light has gone, followed by anxious days of waiting underground. Then everything becomes uncommonly quiet, with no birds singing, no dogs barking, no wind blowing. On Earth outside, no human being could breathe the burning, acrid air, and in the maelstrom of vapor and dust, no engine could run, no fly could fly. Any plane that was in the air at the time of the collision kept flying high in the sky until it ran out of fuel, and eventually all the planes in the sky crashed down. In some of these planes, whole governments had fled, runaways thinking to land safely after the shock. A sad thought came to Anton about the astronauts and cosmonauts who were watching all this from their space station. Life gets organized somehow in the cenote, but the damp and the heat of the place are difficult to bear. The promiscuity, brawls, and nervous breakdowns make their cloistered life even more difficult. 2 people had already died due to heart attacks, and they had had a devil of a time trying to bury them in the rock. The cenote is connected to a network of other caves through small natural airways, and Anton hopes that the air circulation will be sufficient. On the shortwave radio, some notes of music could still be heard, perhaps from an automatic battery-powered broadcasting station. Nobody wants to get out. They are all terrorized by what has happened. Before opening the cover of the cenote, Anton tries to imagine how it will look outside. It must certainly be very dark, because megatons of dust are blowing in the atmosphere of the asteroid. The intense heat being given off by the sealed steel cover is undoubtedly due to the eruption of the Tajamulco volcano 100 kilometers away. According to Anton's calculations, the temperature should soon start to lower and the weather should become colder and colder every day. On the 6th of February 2013, they noticed that the dampness on the steel cover has turned to frost, and they have to insulate it in order to protect themselves from the cold. After 40 days, as the cover was sealed, they broke the anchor bolts. By then, the temperature of the cover was far below 0 degrees Celsius. Jilinda, Yakutia, Friday, the 21st of December, 2012. The earth shakes with long, violent tremors. The wind blows a gale, and it is thundering so loudly that all the children cry. Hiding in their food cellars at the back of their gardens, people cannot see the gigantic cloud of dust that has darkened the sky in less than 1 hour, nor how the Kuanamka River has completely stopped flowing, permeated with dust. Then, after long hours, the silence is complete. Not the usual silence that is punctuated from time to time by the hammering of a black woodpecker or the cry of some raptor, but a total absence of sound. They are so used to the warmth of their overheated wooden houses that they quickly feel the cold in their permafrost food cellars. All the houses of the village are destroyed, blown away by the shockwave and the ensuing tornadoes. Underground life in such a confined space leads them to the limit of their endurance. It is impossible to get out without risking the life of others, and they are obliged to control any bad moods and avoid, if possible, any nervous breakdown. Thanks to their practice of chanting, they resist despair and anxiety. After a month of this terrible underground life, they prepare to go out. The ceiling of their shelter is not totally weatherproof, and they have noticed for a few days that a shaft of light projects a very bright line on the floor. They don't dare go out to investigate, and they wonder from where this glaring light could come, as at this time of year, above the polar circle, the sun graces them with only 2 hours of daylight. Where does this bright light shining day and night come from? Eleonora's husband attempts to peek out, but the heavy trapdoor is sealed with ice and there is no way to lift it. A few hours later, however, water starts seeping from the ceiling, and this is extremely unusual. When they are finally able to open the trapdoor, they are literally struck down by heat and light. They were accustomed to the heat waves of July that made their green gardens places of enchantment. They used to appreciate those long days that made life so different, when they would dress lightly and celebrate Isiach, the national holiday that lasted several days with songs and dances. Isiach celebrates the sun, which will soon be perceived in a dramatically different way. Something has gone wrong, and Eleonora starts to fear for her and her family's life. The other families of the village have hidden in their food cellars as well, and most of them are still there. Eleonora, squishing through the mud, calls her neighbors, checks all the cellars, and gathers together everyone she can find. They assemble in one of the shelters where the temperature is still bearable, but the quick change of temperature has made the walls very damp and the soil muddy. They can't stay there, shuttling between an unhealthy shelter and the burning heat outside. Someone brings a thermometer. It shows 50 degrees Celsius, and its little reservoir at the top has exploded. They have to escape, but where will they go? The sun is strangely stationary over their heads. It hasn't moved for hours. Whichever direction they decide to take, they would like to get away from the shafts of sunlight. They suppose that if they go south, in the direction that was formerly the south, they will find solutions, for they need food, medicine, and transportation. One of them, who has returned from a little exploratory walk, reports that he could not go very far. The permafrost has melted down more than 1 meter. Unbelievable. The ground is so muddy that it is nearly impossible to walk without sinking one's feet in mud at every step. The drunken trees, leaning because of the softening of the soil at their roots, are almost all lying on the ground now, and the whole taiga is dying. Worst of all are the mosquitoes, more aggressive than ever. In former times, hunters and nomads used to head up north to a cool tundra where the mosquitoes didn't venture, but that seems impossible now. Eleonora tells her neighbors about Constantina's vision, and they all agree on her plan to survive. They start to build makeshift snowshoes so as not to slosh in the mud, as well as to make umbrellas out of reindeer skins in order not to suffocate with the heat. Their only all-terrain vehicle is out of order, and their horses, those Yakut horses adapted to the rough climate, have all died. The only solution left is to walk. since all the rivers they could travel on are flowing in the wrong direction. Their stocks of meat are defrosted now and won't last very long, unless they slice and dry them under the sun. On the other hand, all kinds of plants whose seeds have been carried by the strong winds are already germinating. Therefore, during their long escape from the sun, the shaman of the group travels often in an alternate reality, beating his drum. He makes contact with the spirit of every new plant they discover, even tiny ones, in order to learn their nutritional and therapeutic characteristics. It is thanks to their shamanic background that they survive, and to the quality of their relationship with the environment. For months now they have been sloshing across the hostile taiga, and their progress is slow. The most difficult thing they have to bear is the omnipresent sunshine, like a warden in a prison of light. Without understanding it, they see that there is no night anymore, and that the sun is frozen in the middle of the sky. Some people suffer sometimes from anxiety attacks, intent to pull out their eyes because they can't stand the everlasting brightness. The group eventually crosses the Lena River and arrives in Yakutsk, where they only find devastation. Constructed during the post-communist era, when Moscow was still giving to the Autonomous Republic of Yakutia a comfortable dividend from the sale of diamonds, some buildings are now leaning like the drunken trees in the forest. Supported by concrete pillars hammered into the permafrost, some buildings have now slowly fallen intact on their side. The traditional wooden house that in the past has resisted cyclones has already sunk 1 story down into the softened ground. The group has to quit Yakutsk as soon as possible. In one of his travels in the other reality, the shaman comes across the spirit of a drop of water that has just fallen in front of him on a stone baked by the sun. It still has a few minutes of life left as a drop, and the shaman chooses to get in contact with it to fill himself with its qualities. Water never dies. It passes through all states of matter and transforms itself spontaneously into multiple forms, always in movement, always participating in the life process, and participating in death when it is withdrawn. Nothing can stop its destiny, even if it does not move for centuries. Time is on its side. Water lives, whether withdrawn or in symbiosis. It always flows, transforms itself, and sometimes comes back to the same place after a long trek. It is the spirit of this drop that will guide the shaman, and from the journey in shamanic reality, he brings back an itinerary and keys to how they can adapt to future conditions they will face in life. They pass the Kolyma River and quit the land of the Tungus, the nickname given by the Russians to the Arctic people of Siberia, meaning the geese of the tundra. When they come to a deserted village, they rush into every food cellar in order to find some cool air, at least in the deepest cellars. There are putrefied corpses everywhere, and the smell makes them flee. Very few trees are still standing, and the more they advance towards the Bering Strait, the lower the temperatures are, and the lower the sun is on the horizon. The paths become more passable. New species of trees begin to replace the dying ones. The mosquitoes are less numerous. Nature and the climate are more welcoming. They all have the feeling that soon, in a few weeks' time, they will find a place to settle down. For them, it is logical that if they keep on traveling in the opposite direction from the sun, they will eventually end up in a dark region. Zinacantan, 30th of January 2013. It is the first opening of the cenote's entrance since the collision. Outside, the darkness is complete. A heavy silence hangs over them. No bird is singing, and there is no human presence. Anton avoids thinking about the rest of the population of the planet. It is too terrible. He is concerned about his brother Novomir and the others living in Russia. Their village has been totally devastated. There is nothing left of the forests on the surrounding hills. Everything is covered with thick layers of ashes. The lake has been completely permeated with dust. For the time being, the community decides to keep on residing in the cenote, fearing something, if only just the unknown. After 3 months, there is still complete darkness without interruption. Daylight has not returned. Now it is clear that this darkness is not caused anymore by dust in the atmosphere, since they can see the stars and a crescent moon clearly, but upside down. Anton tries to understand the situation. He lays to rest the idea of others that the sun has gone off by reminding them that the moon reflects the light of the sun. Anton finds Jupiter and the Milky Way, but in a very unusual place in the sky. Suddenly, Anton literally freezes. A vertigo overtakes him. He understands in a way that amazes him that the planetary collision has shifted the axis of the rotation of the Earth. Now, the axis faces the Sun, and the new North Pole is continuously exposed to its radiations. The Earth is like a whirligig that the Sun watches from above, with the Earth's axis pointing towards it. By observing the motions of the stars and the moon, Anton deduces that the North Pole, now continuously lit by the sun, has come to correspond to the north of Pakistan. The South Pole is now in Mexico. In the new equatorial zone, the only place where life is possible for humans, one can find West Africa, which has barely moved, New Zealand, and the extreme west of Europe. Much later, newly emerged territories will be discovered. Anton concludes that there will be no seasons anymore, and that the day-night cycle has disappeared too. He remembers suddenly that there was a poorly educated American psychic who prophesied in a sleep-like trance. He had predicted this polar shift 100 years before, but attributed the cause of this disaster to the sins of the humans who would be responsible for all that happened. Now he remembers his name, Edgar Cayce. But this time the sins have taken the shape of a big asteroid. Anton imagines and tries to visualize the globe according to the new position of the Earth's axis, which is not an easy exercise. The more one goes to the north, towards the solar pole, the higher the temperatures are, and the more intense the evaporation from the oceans is. At the equator, there is a temperate zone with a mild climate and with a red sun on the horizon. Beyond the equator is the dark hemisphere, with cooler temperatures that become glacial at the dark pole, always in darkness. In this dark hemisphere, in the absence of sunlight, the vegetation has nearly completely disappeared. It is now June 2013. Even though there is no shift between night and day, Anton keeps track of time thanks to his trusted watch. They will soon have to find other ways of measuring the time, adapted to the new reality of the world. Anton lived in the land of the Mayans, close to the Guatemala-Mexico border, next to the multicolored lakes of Montebello. He didn't know much about their ancient civilization, and he no longer had the time to learn more about it. He knew as a mathematics enthusiast that they used the zero long before the Indians. He speaks a little bit of tzotzil with his wife, but the family usually speaks Spanish. He likes these descendants of the Mayans, poor but proud, too often exploited by the mestizos, half-bloods. Despite the harsh conditions of life, their tradition survives. Anton is a gringo, but he comes from such a remote country that he is classified in the category of good gringo. When the situation outside seems stable, such that the temperature remains around minus 30 degrees Celsius, they decide to leave the cenote. They need to find where the daylight is. Everyone deeply trusts Anton, and they begin to accept the idea that the sun still shines up there in the north, and that it's probably there that they will have to start their new life, without hope of returning. On the chosen day, they all leave the place together, bringing a quantity of food in a cart that one person pulls along. They even try to use the cars that are abandoned everywhere, but the engines are full of dust and the oil is frozen inside. Many cars and houses look sandblasted. The trees are lying on the ground and look like giant pencils, all of them oriented in the same direction, with their branches torn away and their bark seemingly sandpapered. They still find goods in the collapsed ruins of department stores, things that can improve everyday life. There is no problem finding food here. The intense cold has preserved most of it. Rats are swarming everywhere, and Anton's companions have to watch over their food. They spend their nights in the ruins of buildings that have had their windows blown away. They always find enough rubble to burn to keep them warm and to cook the abundant frozen food. During their travels, they do not meet a living soul, although they see evidence of others. Here and there are remnants of a fire and a stray dog well nourished, with human flesh. The sight of frozen bodies alongside the roads, in devastated buildings and inside vehicles is now a part of their everyday life. In Mexico City, they discover a virtual polar Pompeii, with millions of people forever transfixed as if they were making their escape and were halted by searing dust. The impact of the asteroid has been so powerful that all the tectonic plates of the planet have shifted, waking many sleeping volcanoes located in the fire belt that crosses Mexico from east to west. Time passes, and scenes of desolation follow one after the other. They walk on cracked highways cluttered with abandoned cars and trucks. Sometimes they are attracted by lights, only to discover that there is no one there, only wind-powered turbine lamps that are still lit. They walk now along the coast, parallel to the Gulf of California. Through the thick layer of ice, they discern, under their feet, hundreds of corpses trapped there. Sometimes a hand or face rises above the ice, making them stumble. In forming his itinerary, Anton had taken account of the location of US nuclear plants. This was an inspired guess because, as will be discovered later, none of those plants resisted the shock. They make headway, going north along the Colorado River, ignoring that, a little to the west of them, half of California has slid into the ocean at the edge of the San Andreas Fault. Further, Las Vegas is dark and gloomy. The hurricanes have battered everything. The huge hotels of the Strip are still standing, but windows and doors have been blown away. A thick layer of snow covers the dead city. A huge tidal wave destroyed everything along the coast. The wave was at least 150 meters, 13 yards high, and shipwrecks could be found lying even on hillsides. Deep inside them, Anton's companions perceive this disruption as their fate, laying down long ago since the end of the 26,000-year-long cosmic cycle of the last Pactum, which marks the era of revelation, the end of the materialist illusion, which also corresponds to the end of the Pisces era, a Christian symbol. Thanks for listening to the Circadian World in the footsteps of Taiga Maya, Part 3. Written and directed by Thierry Van Roy, with the voice of Woody Young. Music composed by Thierry Van Roy. Lyrics by Melanie Gabriel. Singer Melanie Gabriel.
¿Qué quiere decir?
Significa, ya le diste la medicina al caballo del rey, por si no le has dado la medicina, pela la yuca y dáselo al caballo del rey para que lo coma.
Positioned here, conditioned to fear. Living is frightening, leading me to an end.
Mi nunca vinciuto col bel, però mi nanu shambi. Kata chanshana chaka tu yala he. Tujuk toko bel tenzi kushambi.
He sees a world, feel he can mold. Living inspired, everything new for him. Man's warning words, song of the birds. Life has worth every second being your first.
Mi nunca vinciuto col bel, però mi nanu tohol. Kata chansh mahanai katu yala he. Tujuk toko bel tenzi kutohol.
Bueno, este tema trata sobre una boda. Una boda de dos tortolitas.
No, el Taco Bell es persona, pero lo que pasa
entonces-
dinero no hay, los animales.
Bueno, entonces